October 7 attack have reshaped the Middle East. The situation that happened in Syria, it was very dramatic and nobody was expecting it, including Israel, United States, Russia, Iran. In 2013, it was about to start turning into an all-out war. Relatively, they are connected. It's the domino effect. It has definitely played a big role into what happened in Syria. Israel's action in Syria right now of destroying the military and occupying territories is basically worries that opposition will take Syria and launch attack on Israel. Not always the involvement of other nations in state building process is good. Excessive international pressure on Syria will break it, will turn into a black hole that will devastate the Syrian population and their own interest in the region.
Thank you so much, Musaab Balchi, for being on the show and giving us time. This show that we're going to have with you is particularly focused on whatever is happening right now in Middle East, especially in Syria, because this is a kind of a seismic shift that we are observing within the Middle Eastern geopolitics. So, before going to the topic, I would like to know something about you. Where are you from, and what are you doing right now? What engagements do you have nowadays in your professional or personal life? If you would want to tell us and the audience.
Yeah, well, I'm really excited to be with you, and thank you so much for the invite. It's very timely conversation. So, my name is Musaab Balchi. I'm a Palestinian. Was born and raised in Syria. I've lived like about 23 years in my life before moving to the United States and living in there. I'm currently based in Dubai in a transition phase. I'm a founder of Gateway MENA. It's a geopolitical consulting firm specialized in the MENA region. It aspires to provide localized insights about ongoing situations in the Middle East to international stakeholders. I'm a former subject matter expert on threat detection in the MENA region, with a background of about 9 years of experience working in media analysis and geopolitical analysis, specialized in the Middle East. And also I was in my life in Syria, I was a journalist during the Syrian uprising for 3 years, covering the situation on the ground from Damascus before moving to the United States. And actually, my work in Syria, what got me to be in the United States, given the very tight political environment in there and the violent situation in 2013 Syria was in.
You have observed the Syrian war from, as a person who was there on the ground. What difference do you see between 2013 and 2024?
Well, the situation is dramatically different. First and foremost, in 2013, it was about to start turning into an all-out war. At that point, oppositions were very fragmented into very small armed groups, unorganized, undertrained, and all of that. And the Syrian government was very heavy-handed, very much in control. The Syrian military was very solid at that point, and security was throughout Damascus, throughout cities, oppressing and taking control of any sort of dissent that they could face. Now the situation is entirely different. The Syrian opposition have been grouped into much larger umbrellas. So many few actors right now, and the Syrian government, before it has been toppled, basically the Syrian military was at its weakest point, and that has facilitated the toppling very easily, very quickly, and rapidly.
All right. So there are a lot of theories which are floating over here in our side of the world, because we are quite at a distance from your region. But since 7th October last year, which happened, and since the war in Gaza, and later on this uprising again against the regime of Bashar, do you think any linkages between the two incidents, or these are two isolated events that took place in Middle East?
Yeah, I mean, relatively they are connected. It's the domino effect. kind of impact. The October 7 attacks have reshaped the Middle East and broke all the boundaries that has been setted throughout the years in terms of relations between governments to governments and in terms of conflicts. And it has definitely played a big role into what happened in Syria in recent time. And first and foremost, Hezbollah's involvement in the war and Israel's attacks on Hezbollah and Iran in Syria, and Hezbollah's being busy and preoccupied in being attacked in Lebanon has opened the floor for oppositions to take the initiative to hit Syria into places that has been left empty by Hezbollah militants and Iran militants in the north of Syria. So basically, that's one of the main domino effects that has played in the situation in Syria, and I could further elaborate as we progress.
So Bashar's outset, and now he has fled to Russia. There's a power vacuum. Also, Al-Jolani has nominated himself as the interim prime minister till March 2025. But do you see any kind of power vacuum because of Bashar being out of the picture, and Iran, Israel, and Turkey might be playing their role right there in the Syrian geopolitics and internal politics as well?
In a way, there is a vacuum in Syria. The vacuum, we can see it internally right now, and we are navigating it day by day. It's very difficult to predict how the situation politically inside of Syria will evolve, given the uncharted territory that we are in, and the many actors that are involved in the Syrian uprising turned civil war in Syria. And it's very important to keep in mind that there is the transitional justice phase and how we have to move forward from there, whether it will be revenge style or actually transitional justice. So that's what we are trying to navigate, and we sense that's the most important. Now, geopolitically, the geopolitical pressure is immense, and it could literally have enormous, devastating impact on Syria transition because of the competing projects that are from outside being imposed on Syria or trying to influence the Syrian decision and transition. And we can see Israel so far is seizing the opportunity and invading Syria, occupying new territories, and devastating and destroying all military infrastructure that was owned by the Syrian military before it was dissolved. The role right now and planning is quite dangerous, actually, if we say, because it could complicate the matter vividly and then also backfire on Israel in the short and longer run. Now, Iran now in a retreat mode after it has lost its man in Syria. It is trying to understand and to kind of open links and understand how it can collaborate and work with the Syrian opposition. But Iran's role in the Syrian uprising or in the Syrian civil war was very, very negative. It has committed enormous amount of sectarian crimes and other forms of oppression. So that has not been overshadowed yet by the toppling of the Syrian government and stayed in the mind. I think rather than thinking of Iran geopolitics right now, probably Turkey geopolitics is more relevant, and Israel and the United States and other regional and international factors.
So you talked about Israel, since you're also originally from Palestine, and there are two kind of. This is an entailing question to what I asked before. Israel has seized the opportunity, and not only they have targeted the military installations inside Syria, but they have also taken control of some of the part of Golan Heights as well.
Mhm, mhm,
So,
mhm,
uh, do you see, because now there are certain kind of narratives and perceptions being built up around the world, over here in Pakistan as well, and in South Asia as well, that probably this is a Western-backed revolution that took place over there in Syria, which has
mhm.
actually given an opportunity to Israel to expand its influence in the Middle East. So, how do you see
Yeah.
that? Do you see that there is a connection between, or there is a plausibility of this theory being played out there, or it's something which is just a figment of imagination of some people?
I think, in a way, it's a misunderstanding and misread of the situation. This the Israel has been attacking Syria over many, many years. I think I remember as far as of 2013 actively when I was still back in Syria and I witnessed the first Syrian Israeli airstrike on Syria. And over the past year, it has conducted on a daily basis attacks in Syria. So Israel, in a way, how it looks on Syria, it wants the Syrian government to be strong enough to prevent insurgency from its borders and its side, an insurgency like the style of Gaza and in Lebanon, where they could be a threat to Israel from the Syrian side. So it wants it to be strong enough to control any insurgency, but weak enough to stand up and to prevent any Israeli attack. And that phase, that's how we can define the Israeli strategy over the years. Um, that's why actually we could argue that this is why, in a way, the West and the international community and Israel never really committed to the collapse of the Syrian government over the years because of the worries of the repercussion on Israel. Now, the situation that happened in Syria, it was very dramatic and nobody was expecting it, including Israel, United States, Russia, Iran, and all of that. So at that point, they had to take measures and they had to do something. And we can argue that Israel's action in Syria right now of destroying the military and occupying territories is basically worries that opposition will take Syria and launch attack on Israel. But because before that, they were not busy with that because they know that Syrian government was protecting the borders. So in fact, it is the reverse logic, not how we are thinking about it. Israel in both ways are taking advantage and it's taking risk and it's exploiting the opportunity of advancing. First, it's advancing in Syria and taking more territories, and this is the exploitation mode that Israel functions with. And it's taking risk because while Syrian opposition right now are trying to hold tight and to control, and they are sending messages that we want to focus internally on the let's say um, the healing of this of Syrian population and moving forward in our life. Israel has been very, very aggressive into its action. At one point, it may trigger actually some of the many, many actors that are still not under one umbrella. Okay, and it's creating some sort of hostility among Syrians that they have been much more inclined to focus on Syria post-Assad zone, but rather Israel's action is kind of um, risking turning the zone Syria into a hostile environment that um,
Israel,
it
Israel is
could backfire.
more of a victim of self-fulfilling prophecy, that probably
Yeah.
they're threatened. So, do you see any kind of threat being emanating from Syria for Israel in near future or in far future?
I can't argue on that because things are still unclear. Now, it's really Israel always likes to have enemies in the region to hit them, and but they are small enemies, so it likes that mode, and it always creates those enemies all around it, like in the West Bank, Gaza, Hezbollah, and now in Syria, uh, because it overpowers everyone and it feels the power. Israel basically assesses risk based on capacities. It's not based on capacities and intent. This is how other actors and internationally and in conflict you assess. It's the capacities and the intent to conduct action. But Israel does not care about the intent.
Mhm.
If there is someone that wants to attack or not, it just cares about the capacity. So that's why they are devastating any capacity that could impose threats on Israel. And they don't care really about good relation, bad relation. They look at the whole region as bad. They need to survive. They're in survival zone. They're an expansionist, and they think this will. Not in the very actually in the long run, it's a strategy of self-sabotage.
So they are trying to preemptively, strike at Syria so that if there would be any, self-perceived threat, they can take care of it right now. All right. So coming towards the internal dynamics of Syria right now, we had certain kind of situation over in South Asia in last 4 years. In 2021, Afghanistan it saw a kind of regime change when the previous regime, they fled from Afghanistan right after the pullout of US, and Taliban took over there. Then in Bangladesh, we saw that Hasina Wajid, she also fled away, and the revolutionaries or the students, they took over the Bangladeshi, politics from the internal side. But they quickly, covered the vacuum, the power vacuum over there, because they already had some kind of system in place over there. Syria is a war-torn country. It doesn't have such kind of established system or structure right now. So how do you see that? Do you think that the current revolutionaries or the people who are there in the interim government, they are capable enough to go for the nation building process? And do you think that other countries like Saudi Arabia, Qatar, UAE, Bahrain, Kuwait, they will be participating in such nation building efforts of Syrians?
Well, as you said, basically Syria is a war-torn country, and there is a lot of grievance and a lot of background in the context to basically consider. Right now, opposition and basically Tahrir al-Sham, who have been effectively the main player in toppling the government, is in control. Now, we are, as Syrian, a little surprised or by their action so far. They have been projecting some sort of a national narrative
Yep.
that we were not expecting. Um, and they have been very active in addressing the worries that has been rising over the past 3 days. And there are several incidents in which actually were some sort of not alarming, but rather like an indication of a trajectory that the country could go, and people start talking about it, and immediately they have addressed them. Now, Tahrir al-Sham is known for its pragmatism, and this is one of the reason how they have managed to swipe all over Syria and the map, including many of minority villages and cities throughout the north of Syria up to Damascus, because they were able to communicate with every community in Syria in their own language.
Mm.
So that is good so far. Um, Now, it's not a promising sign that the interim government has been appointed, the HTS government that was in Idlib has been appointed to a national government. It's not a good sign. It excludes many actors that has been and components from the Syrian society. It excludes women, Kurds, other minorities, and the current Syrian government men, or the Syrian coalition, um, women, and so on. So that is not the positive thing that we are looking into. Yet again, the challenges internationally are extreme. The domestic pressure is extreme, that and that will play factors into how Syria transitions. There is some sort of an awareness among HTS, Tahrir al-Sham, of the international community and the geopolitics, and they are refraining from any style of jihadi vocabularies, Salafi mentality, etc. And they're talking about Syria as a country, as a nation. And that is amazing. The messages from the international community, including the United States, encouraging Tahrir al-Sham to adopt this language and refrain from a jihadi style mentality. But and that is good. How far they could go with that, it's difficult to assess right now, um, because I mean, let's be mindful that transition from a Salafi jihadi mentality to a national, it does not happen from one day to another. It could be a pragmatism right now that is leading how far they could go, and when this would compete and go against their long-term agenda for the country and vision for the country, that's a different story right now. So we need to wait and assess and see how things go. Now, regarding other countries and involvement in the state building, not always the involvement of other nations in state building process is good, because um, every country, when they involve in such process, they come with their own agenda, and that's include though all of them are very competing agenda. The Qatari agenda is different than the Saudi, different than the Turkish, different than the Russian, and so on.
Yes.
Um, what we need is basically international community to understand that excessive international pressure on Syria will break it. And if it breaks, it could turn into a black hole that will devastate the Syrian population and their own interest in the region. So they have to be very, very careful with how they deal with Syria. Um, we understand and we agree that we need Syria to be a um, civil rights country in a way where every right is preserved and secured. But it's not the time for taking the country from one project to another and put it in a geopolitical
Uh,
um,
yes.
structuring.
So Turkey is already involved in northern Syria. They have their, skirmishes over there. They have some kind of clashes. I have heard that, read in some news as well, that some clashes are going over there where Turkey is involved right now. On the other end, Saudis are also very much, hoping for it, that they might be getting involved into this, Syrian theater. Now, Saudi and Turkey, they both have their own history, as well, like you said and you mentioned, and Qatar on the other side, they have their own vested agenda. But at the same time, Syria by itself would be needing some kind of shoulder, some kind of assistance from the outer world. So, what proposition do you suggest to the Syrian government right now, the interim government right now, that how can they deal with all these stakeholders in the region, also the stakeholders outside?
Yeah, I think Syrian actors right now really need to prioritize their national interests at the very first and most, and focus on reconciliation and transitional justice, because when we are strong internally, we can deal with the external pressure externally. So that is the most important. And second is Syria, again, faces a lot of problems externally that could really obstruct the move forward. And includes the sanctions, the US sanctions that has been very devastating on the Syrian society and the Syrian economy. So first and foremost, we need the ease up and even better, the removal of those sanctions on Syria that will allow other countries and other companies to get involved and function and start the reconstruction of Syria.
Mm.
So far, countries and companies have been prevented and blocked from functioning in Syria as an outcome of these sanctions, including the obstruction of aid and health and educational materials and all of that. So first and foremost, we need an ease up of those sanctions, and we need to deal with all these competing actors again based on our national agenda rather than being pushed from one agenda to another. I hope I answered your question.
So, my second last question would be on the security end. There was a time, and there is still, there are different factions who are at play right now in Syria. These factions have actually collaborated with each other this time around, and they have posed a significant, challenge to the previous regime, which was Assad's regime, and then they collectively threw it out or toppled it. But at the end of the day, do you see any kind of probability or chances, because of the weak governance right now and the weak infrastructure right now in Syria, that such organizations or such factions may start some kind of their own, program over there? Because I'm asking this question because in Afghanistan, in our neighborhood in Pakistan, when Taliban took over, we were hopeful that all such factions, they will be diluted. They will be taken care of by the next regime that will be coming to the Kabul. But the reverse happened. So, do you think
Mhm.
such kind of elements will be popping up from Syria, and it can become a safe haven for such organizations?
There is a probability of that to happen. Now, again, there were uh, many actors that have been playing in Syria, and not actually all, not the things that happened in Syria, and particularly in the past 10 days, not necessarily all Tahrir al-Sham making. There were local actors that were in Dar'a, and they have nothing to do with the Tahrir al-Sham, and there were local actors in Suwaida as well, a minority, majority province as well. They were involved, and there is the SDF, or the Syria Democratic Forces as well. They were involved. So as well, under Tahrir al-Sham, there were Tahrir al-Sham itself and the Turkish-backed National Army, that are two separate entities that have come together under the Turkish, in a way, direction and organization to launch this attack. And that being said, yes, it could be. It's a possibility. We are in high risk of that. So far as my understanding is that the General Command and Tahrir al-Sham leadership has been meeting with local factions to coordinate and understand them, and to and we will have to wait and see how things move forward from there. Um, but is there a possibility of that? Yes, definitely. The situation in the coast, basically, where Assad majority supporters could. Suwaida is a minority. If it could, other places, something like this could happen, and we will have to wait and see.
Okay. So my last question would be with regards to your other neighborhood, that is Iraq. And most of the Assad's regime's soldiers, they have fled towards Iraq. They have crossed over towards Iraq. Do you see
Mhm.
any kind of intervention from the Iraqi side or from Iran again, that they would be supporting and regrouping these deserters, and they would be coming back and starting a kind of infight within Syria? And if there is a threat like that, I won't call it a threat, but if there is a challenge like that, do you think that the current Indian government, again having all those challenges of governance and restructuring and nation building, they'll be able to face off this challenge as well?
So the soldiers that went to Iraq, they were actually positioned in Deir ez-Zor. And
Mhm.
then when Syrian Democratic Forces, the Kurdish-led forces, attacked Deir ez-Zor, they were given path to move to Iraq, basically a safe passage. So no fighting, just go. And that was in coordination with the Iraqi government. Their number is minimum, not large. Most of them are mandatory military service. They're not high-ranking leadership or die-hard supporters of Assad who were
Mhm.
forced to be there. Um, so I see the risk of being deployed as part of Iran comeback play is minimum. Now, a possibility of uh, Assad backers or supporters in Syria to regroup and fight back is possible if there is a kind of a sectarian attacks and targeting of them if they feel unsafe and unjustly treated. So far, the indications give us that this has been not happening. In fact, many of us Syrians have been very surprised of how things have been moving in Syria, and we will have to wait and see.
Okay, so what is your message for the South Asians, especially particularly for the Pakistanis? How should they see towards this, change in the Middle East, and especially in particularly in Syria? Because there are a lot of debate over here. Some people are obviously supporting that Assad should not have been ousted because now it leaves Syria at a vulnerable position, and Israel is coming in and expanding. The other faction is obviously supporting the revolutionaries, and they are asking tough questions that Assad was involved in, so many human rights violations. So, what is your suggestion to the community over here, that how should we be looking towards the Syrian conflict and now the Syrian change?
Well, first, I think we need to congratulate the Syrian people um, for the outposting of Assad. That is the main core message to them. And second, I understand that they have various competing understanding of that. And I would say stand with people, stand with the Syrian people who have been going through a lot. And understand how do they think and what they went through, because they are rational actors. Eventually, Syrians are like anybody, have their emotions and their logic of things. So try to understand what they have been into and why they are moving forward. You're not gonna love the Syria and worry about Syria more than the Syrian people. So try to understand their perspective and their logic. And your support is critical as Pakistanis on the popular level and on the government level. Their support for the rebuilding of Syria is critical, and basically a weak Syria and fragmented Syria and could impose danger not only on the immediate neighboring countries, but as we have seen over the years, a weak Syria and a weak country could impose and things move far greater than the immediate border. So we need your support from supporting a country that is in need, and we need your support for people that are in need, and that's basically my main message to that.
Thank you so much, Musaab. And it's been an honor to have you on the show. And this was a very enlightening discussion. And I hope that I have learned a lot, obviously, from you about the Syrian situation in particularly, and about the Middle Eastern situation. And I hope that sanity will prevail there. And I hope that Syrian people, in particular, they will be seeing a semblance of peace after so much conflict and war and destruction. Thanks once again, and I hope to see you again sometime on with some other topic on Middle East.
Thank you for having me. Actually, it was a very interesting conversation.